I'm David Thornburg, President and CEO of the Committee of 70, Philadelphia's long-standing advocate for better government and better politics. We have a primary election coming up on May 21st, and the way we look at it, political campaigns are like job interviews. So we're holding job interviews to help you decide who to hire for this job with city commissioner candidates, and give you a chance to hear from them about their vision for the office, what they've accomplished, and what they hope to accomplish as city commissioner. So our guest now is Marwan Kreidie.
Good morning.
Who's a candidate for city commissioner. And as in a job interview, I'm going to start with the most basic of questions, which is this. What is this job that you're applying for, and why are you applying for it?
Well, the city commissioner, as you know, runs the elections in Philly and also runs registration. It's an office with a really low bar, as you may have noticed. One of the current sitting commissioners, who's not running again, never shows up to his job. And the one previous to that hired her daughter, and I think her daughter's in jail because of that. It's a really low bar. And I think that, you know, the fact that voting is so important for our city and for every American, we need to step up and make this not just a regular office and a well-run office, but it's got to be an activist office. We need to increase the number of people voting, increase the number of people registered. And we have to advocate for change in both city procedures and laws, but also statewide. Pennsylvania has some of the most archaic, laws on voter registration in the country. We have to register 30 days before. We have closed primaries. We don't have same-day registration. I'd like to change all that. That's a state issue, right? And I would, one of the promises I'll make is I'll be a commissioner that'll go around the state, look at other boards of elections, work with them to try to get a majority in the state to try to change these archaic laws.
So you sort of hinted at this, but there's rephrasing. There's sort of two pieces of this. One is twice a year there's an election.
Right.
You've got to make sure that election runs smoothly. The other piece is, we'll call it the policy agenda. Which is more important? Which should voters care more about?
I think we should care. They're both equally important, and I can do both. I have the administrative experience. I was the chairman of the State Civil Service Commission, ran an organization with 240 plus people. But I think my passion is more, and you probably could tell from where we did, is the policy. I want to go out there and change things, because in Philadelphia we need power, and the more power we have as a city, the stronger we are in the state, and the better we're able to make changes. Power in politics is money and votes. We don't have the money, we need the votes. So registering more people is not only good for democracy, but it's also good for our city to increase our power in Harrisburg and DC.
So one of the challenges that we've noted, there are many challenges with this job, but one is that there are three people.
Right.
This is sort of, one could say it's a three-headed monster.
Right.
So in presuming, although not for sure, that there's a Democratic majority on the city commissioners, how do you triangulate sort of who does what? And if there's a disagreement between you and a fellow commissioner about some policy issue or some management issue, how do you work that out?
Well, you have to show leadership. And I think in the past, we've seen some weird combinations where the Democrat and the Republican have gotten together and made the majority. You have to show leadership. You have to have vision. You have to show that you can run an organization and that you have the vision to run it.
So we've talked a little prospectively about this, what this job could look like if you were to get elected. Tell us something, take a couple of minutes to give people a sense of your background and how that relates to these two core pieces of the job, the running elections and advocating for changes to the whole process.
So if we look at the administrative part, I've been a chairman of the State Civil Service Commission. I ran the City Civil Service Commission. So I have the administrative ability. I've also advocated, since if you look at my background, I'm a first generation American. My parents are immigrants. We lived overseas. We came here. I'm a birthright 14th Amendment citizen. So I've worked very hard with immigrant groups and new Americans. I was a co-founder of the Philadelphia Immigrant and Citizenship Coalition, PIC. I've run groups like United Voices. which really attempts to get new Americans involved in the political process. And as you know, most people coming here from, we don't have people coming and trying to and becoming new Americans from countries that have robust democracies. We have people coming here from Syria, from West Africa, from countries that don't have a democratic process and who are scared of government. Basically, the government in those countries, the ones you don't interact with them because you wind up going to jail, especially if you open your mouth and talk about politics. So I've done a lot to get those people interested in politics, get organized and voting. So I've done that, and these are hard to reach people. So I think I've had the background in going out there and registering people, and not just registering them, but getting them out to vote. I currently do a lot of work with the Islamic community and the Arab community, and both groups that, especially the immigrant Arab community, that doesn't have a robust democracy in their.
So what have you found that if the core job, as you're suggesting, is expanding the pool of registered voters? So what works?
Well, what works is going out there and meeting the people and speaking in their language, and in their language as Arabic or Haitian Creole or whatever, going out there and telling them it works, but also saying this is what power can do and showing them what power can do. I mean, I'll give you an example. We in the Arabic community were a community that in 1987 we ran a fundraiser for Wilson Good, and people returned our checks because they had Arabic names on it. And that's a good example of where Arab communities got together in the city. We've organized, and since then we've had people appointed to positions of power. That's a good example of what political power does, and I'd like to duplicate that with other new groups.
Well, sounds like you're angling for the job of party chairman.
Hey, no. I think I'm really in a lot of ways this is a partisan position, but I've done most of my work in nonpartisan or bipartisan work. So.
What about this? Is go back to the we'll call it the core job of running elections. What are the challenges in that operation, and what would you bring to those challenges based on your experience?
Well, I think the challenges are, making sure that, you have to fill, you have what, 1,692 different polling places. You have to fill those every election. So how do you do that, right? How do you make sure that those places are accessible, right? Most of our polling places are not accessible to disability, for example. So those are hard things. Now, how do you do that, right? I think you look at where we're missing people. For example, college students, right? The problem with getting them involved is that they're not here in May, right? So if we get college students involved to be judge of elections or to staff those positions, you've got a real problem there. The one group that I think we need to look at is teachers. Teachers are off, right? So we can really look and see where are people not being asked to serve those positions. The other thing is the patronage that's there. I mean, it's and I think I've read things that you've put out. I agree with you that the position should not be an elected position, but I have my own ideas. I don't know if you want to hear about those ideas, but I don't think it should also be under the mayor's control.
Yeah, we'll beg that question for the time being, because our focus right now is May 21st. Right. You're running, so forth. So just back to the turnout question, we sort of talked about politics. You're right. People coming out. This is the original source of power in this democracy. You're running as a Democrat, and you're running as an elected official. There are times when high turnout benefits an incumbent or a challenger, and there are times when low turnout benefits. And frankly, my experience, most elected officials, whichever one works better for them is what they're for. So how would you deal with a situation where you've got some active, registration drives, turnout, we're all going to come to the polls, and you get a call from a city council incumbent who says, like, what are you doing? Because don't you understand, this works better for me with 25% turnout than 35% turnout.
Well, I've never been one of those people who would take a call like that. I mean, I'll take the call, let them talk to me, but I wouldn't listen to them, because in all, the strength of our city and the strength of this commission is to make the turnout big. I've disagreed with in various people. I've disagreed with them, and I've done my own thing when it's right. I don't follow the party dictates or the latest. I mean, if you want to Google me, I was very, I worked again. I mean, the governor did some things which I didn't like. I liked the governor. and I was very vociferous in advocating for my position. So I don't follow a dictate by someone who calls me.
Let me give you another. You mentioned it, so I'll pick up on
Good.
the thread. Let's call it a hypothetical. You're
Sure.
one of 3 elected commissioners.
Mhm.
It becomes apparent early on that one of your colleagues never shows up for work.
Right.
What do you do?
Well, you have to publicize it. I mean, the reality is he's elected. He or she is elected. How do you do things? I mean, you can't get rid of them, right? It's not possible. What you do is you make a big noise about it. You go out to the media and say things like that. You first try to work it out with the individual. Right. I understand. You try to work it out with the individual, but and shame them into doing it. But other than that, I don't think we have the tools yet to do things about that. We don't have any kind of recall possibility in our election system.
One other issue that's come up, and then I want to talk to you about what you really hope to accomplish. Issue has to do with the selection of new voting machines.
Right.
As you know, the governor has suggested as strongly as he can that there ought to be new voting machines in place for this fall's election as one way of combating cybersecurity
Right.
possibilities, threats that are out.
We don't want the Russians voting for our.
So the city commissioners chose a particular type of voting machine. There's been some pushbacks and community opposition. Where are you on all that?
I think it was a very bad decision. I think it was bad from process. They should have had a much, they knew about the dictate or the edict by the government to get the governor to get new machines. They waited till the last moment, only had 2 public hearings. There was no demonstration of the materials, of the machines. And then I think they chose the wrong machines. They chose the most expensive machines, right, which we don't have the money for. These machines, not only are they more expensive, but they're so sensitive, we have to have a whole new warehouse facility that's air conditioned, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was the wrong machines. I don't think they're as secure as they could be. And I think if you have both the city controller and the state attorney, auditor general saying don't buy these machines, I think we shouldn't buy these machines.
So you want to restart the process?
I would love to restart the process. I don't know if I have that ability, but I think there needs to be. I mean, I think if
even if that means we were trying out new voting technology in a presidential primary next year.
I think that's the case. I mean, I think what we have is the wrong machines. I don't know if we. I mean, I do think that getting them by the fall is going to be very difficult if we restart the process. But I think there's low-tech machines that we could get, hand marked paper ballots.
Mm-hmm.
I think work. We should look at the process that Montgomery County did or what Pittsburgh's doing right now. So I think there is a way to get the machines, and if it has to be, I'd rather have I'd rather have a better machine for the primaries than a bad machine for the November election.
Okay. One last question in the sort of policy perspective category. We, among others, have pointed out how significant ballot position is to the future. You've got a pretty good ballot position.
I got the best, right?
You've got the golden ticket. That's not fair. It's not right.
Right.
What would you do about it?
I'd like to have a system where you have randomization, especially in judicial elections. I don't think you want to do it in district elections, but in judicial elections, in any election that has more than X number of people, you should have some kind of randomization. I believe you need state permission to do that, though. It'd have to be something that you change with the state, but it has to be randomized.
So that would be one of your issues
right.
that you would take to
yes.
randomization.
Okay. I think that's an issue that you could easily win. I mean, that you could potentially win. I mean, it's unfair that if you're number one in the judicial race, you'll probably win.
No argument here. So let's fast forward 4 years. You get elected. Now you're looking back on what you've accomplished. Give me, 1, 2, 3 things, because most often you can only accomplish a few significant things in a 4-year period. What's that look like? What does this time 2023 look like?
Well, so hopefully the elections run smoothly. There's no controversy over the office, no corruption, and I mean, I've never had that in any of the offices I've run. But I'd like to implement 3 specific programs to increase registration. One I call transit voter, the other one I call library voter, and the other one I call the landlord-tenant voter registration act. Library voter and transit voter are very similar. Motor voter is the only thing we've done in the state of Pennsylvania or throughout the country to increase registration. but a lot of Philadelphians don't have driver's license, right? My kids have an 18 and 20-year-old. They're registered. They're going to they better be registered.
Yeah, I hope
but
so.
and they better vote for me. But they're not. They didn't register via the motor voter. So if we get them doing their septic cards, if we get them doing their library cards, there is the technology. It's very easy that you just plop that information over to the online system. And it's safe because it goes to the online system. It doesn't, we're not taking underage people or so forth. They still have to do that.
Right.
The other thing I would urge, and this has to go, I believe, through city council, but there may be a chance that the mayor can do it on his own. Landlord tenant voter registration started in Madison, Wisconsin. They have it in Seattle, St. Paul, Minneapolis, where every landlord, when they have a new tenant, has to give them a document for a lot of things, but one of them has to be voter registration. It has worked in Madison. They've increased their voter registration among tenants. As you know, movers or renters have the lowest rate of voter registration. And we have a large tenant or renter community in the city. So those are three things I want to do. Those are the three things I want to do.
All right. We got to wrap things up, but thank you, Marwan Kreidie, for joining us.
I appreciate you giving us the time.
Once again, primary coming up May 21st. Make a plan now to vote. Share it with your friends, your neighbors, your family, everyone that you know. Get out to the polls on May 21st. If you need some more help trying to sort your way through the ballot, and it's a big one here in Philadelphia, go to our website at 70.org, the word 70, and you can take advantage of our world-class nonpartisan voter guide. You could also download the We Vote by the Committee of 70 app on your phone, so you have literally in the palm of your hand everything you need to be a super voter on election day. So thanks so much, and we'll see you at the polls.
Thank you.